there's many companies that are bleeding on the back end and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So you start there, and then you start to look at, okay, can I look about the competitors in my space? And I don't.
You found your way to the Winning Tactics podcast with host Adam Sinkus. Adam discusses winning tactics with small business owners and entrepreneurs, uncovering processes and introducing the tools and solutions for enhancing the bottom line. Thanks again for finding your way to the Winning Tactics podcast, and now your host, Adam Sinkus.
Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is my favorite day of the week. It's Winning Tactics Podcast Day, and we got an exciting show. Before we dive into the show, as always, don't forget to go check us out on your favorite podcasting network, YouTube, and find us on social at The Winning Tactics. Excited for today's show because I got friend, colleague, and general business boss, John Knotts, with me today. John, welcome to the show. So glad to have you on. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, Adam, thanks for inviting me out here. Been listening to your show for several months now, so it's really awesome to be invited. Real quick, John Knotts. I'm a personal and professional business coach and consultant. I own my own company, Crosscutter Enterprises, and I've been coaching and consulting for, 25 years plus. Started in the Air Force, worked with Booz Allen Hamilton, top 10 consulting firm in the nation, worked inside Fortune 100 companies, and now I do this for myself.
Absolutely fantastic. So glad to have you on. Our topic du jour today is one that is near and dear to my heart. We are talking about how your business is a system of systems. So tell us a little bit about what does that actually mean, right? Let's define that a little bit.
Well, a lot of people when they think about a business, they think very siloed. So let's say you're in marketing and your job is digital marketing. You're very focused with blinders on, I do digital marketing, and it might be very specific that I'm working SEO. The thing is that marketing as an function in an organization has a lot of different moving parts. There are so many things that are happening. And because of that, it is considered to be a system in your organization. But see, you have marketing and you have sales and you have operations and human resources and finance, and all of those are systems as well. And a lot of times when we have a problem in an organization, a business, we go after very specific things that we think are wrong. And we don't understand that the system of systems means that there's usually a whole lot of things happening, and you have to really examine what's going on in your organization to be able to fix it.
I love that, right? And you're spot on about the silo thing, because that to me is like a really, really dangerous space, especially I think in small businesses specifically, right? When you have a marketing person that's disconnected from a salesperson who's disconnected from an operations person, there's a lot that can go wrong very, very quickly. From messaging to promises of things that we can or can't do, to the operations team going, well, the sales guy sold this with these things, and well, we don't do those things.
Exactly. Now it's I often caution people that the silo is not the bad thing. We create the silos because we want the specialization in whatever they're doing. So maybe in operations, you might break up your operations department by industry or by geography. When you definitely are going to have like a marketing and a sales team, and your finance team is separate. That's because you need that expertise as you grow your company.
Mhm.
The problem with silos is that people start to focus on their own agendas. They start to they stop communicating and they start fighting over resources because they're not all going in the same direction. And that's when the silo goes bad. And what I always am concerned about is when people say, "Oh, we need to tear down the silos." No, that's not your problem. The silo is there because you need it there.
Yeah.
You need to understand how to work through the silo.
Yeah. No, I love that. Right. And so let's start to kind of frame this up because you frame businesses into kind of three primary phases, right? Tell us what those phases are. Let's start there.
So, speaking of systems, if you're running a business, you're focused on three different things, high level. One, you're growing the business. Two, you're scaling the business. And I believe that scale and growth are two different things. And then you're improving the business. And in each one of those areas, there are different things to think about that make it effective, make your business effective.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. Like growth and scale are two very different things. And if you I think improve that improving piece happens and in the other two places as well, but it is a different skill set, right? So
A lot of people, they say that you need to do growth or scaled growth. And I'm like, It's growth. It's growth. Growth happens, and we focus on that a lot. Oh, we're going to grow the company. We want to get more customers. We want to make more money, increase our revenue. But the problem is if you don't focus on the scale side of things, then stuff starts breaking in your
yep.
organization. So you have to scale your business as well as grow your business.
Yeah, to me that is a really critical crossroads, right? You have to be, I think, open and honest with yourself as a business owner of how far can I go with the team or with the systems that I have now,
Right.
and then realize when you're at that point or when you're nearing that point so you can start to build the rest of the pieces that go in it for that scale, and then eventually moving, more so into the improve phase, or in the improve part of your business. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about systems that are critical from a growth perspective, right? Because I think there are some systems, at least in my experience, there's systems I've put in play that definitely relate specifically to growth. What are some of those systems that, as a company is starting to grow, that they need to put in play to really start to be successful?
So, well, there's six areas in growth that people need to focus on. Mostly what people focus on is adding more customers, selling more product. To be able to do that, you need to start to build a marketing department and a sales department that have good processes in place to be able to manage as the business grows. A lot of times, especially small businesses, it'll be the founder, maybe a couple of people in the organization that are doing everything. And that's just not scalable. So, if you want to sell more product, you're going to have to establish teams that are going to help you. Now, that doesn't mean you have to build it yourself. You can outsource these, and it's a great way to start.
Hmm.
But and a lot of times it's important to have at least somebody that is overseeing the functions that you are building. So let's say you want to outsource some marketing activities and you go to somebody to do digital marketing for you. Well, they're doing the tactical piece, but if you don't have somebody overarching the marketing function, there's no strategy.
Yeah.
So you have to find that first to be able to move in that right direction. But there are five other ways to grow your business. You can adjust your prices.
Yep.
Adjusting prices is a perfectly acceptable way to grow. You can make more money. You can raise your prices and make more money. You'll probably sell less, but overall, you're going to probably make more money unless you outsource yourself right out of the market. But you can also lower your price and you can sell more at a lower price point. And this might bring in a lot more customers, which you have to think about the scale too. You can bundle products, you can create new products or services that complement the things that you're already doing. There's a lot of companies that they might just have one thing that they sell. That's all they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's like, well, what else could you do? What could you add with this? If you're doing, like in my business, coaching and consulting, maybe I want to create an app that might go along with what I offer. So my clients can now buy the app and they can get additional information. So there's a lot of different ways to grow, and you just have to really examine your opportunities.
I love that. Like, I think we get stuck in the fact that growth just simply means more customers, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be that. And I love that you point that out because I've recently done a lot of that with my own business, is figuring out, I don't necessarily need more customers. I just need to offer a certain spectrum or a wider spectrum of products that target that market. And as a result of doing that, I've seen growth from it, so I can attest this strategy works.
No, a lot of people, they're constantly like taking the one thing that they do and trying to sell more of it. So one of the things, my wife and I, we own a horse farm. Well, we have a capacity to have 40 horses on property. And, usually you try to limit the number of horses that you have on a property. Otherwise they'll graze it and, destroy it. So I can only have so many horses on property. So what are my options? Well, if I've got horses on property, are the owners in a training program? Do we offer training programs? Are there other things that we can do for the horses or the owners, training the horses, maybe specialty services? So there's a lot of things you can think about that have nothing to do with adding more customers. You always want to keep your company alive and constantly making money, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have to sell more of what you have.
I also want to touch on the pricing thing, because that is something that, I think we talked about it. I've talked about it with a few other people as well. This mindset that, like, as a very, very, as a startup, right, you tend to charge less than you would as a seasoned coach or seasoned whatever you do. But you don't have to stay there. And like,
Right.
I think it was us specifically, in one of our many conversations where we were talking about, you get 5 clients in and then you raise your prices, and then 5 more clients and you raise your prices. I think that is a very, very reasonable strategy to get yourself moving forward and generate more revenue for your business where you can grow. So talk to us a little bit about, how you can play with pricing to really win in the marketplace and grow your business.
So there is obviously the increase your price. So you're right. We start somewhere and we're usually at a pretty low price point. I know when I started, I was very low price point, but I also was doing it as a side hustle. When I decided to go full time, I was still at that price point. So I really had to examine, like, okay, I don't have the full-time job to support me anymore. I have to take care of my own benefits. So I have to look at what are the costs associated with what I need. And you have to be able to make enough money. A lot of people, they don't really understand all that stuff when they start out. And you really have to take a hard look at how much things are costing you, where all your money's going, so that you can determine whether or not you can afford to even be your own company. There's many companies that are bleeding on the back end and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
So you start there, and then you start to look at, okay, can I look about the competitors in my space? And the term competitor to me is kind of like, it shouldn't be even in my language, because I look at everybody that does what I do as a potential partner. And I try
Mhm.
to get to know them and understand what things they deal with, and I can send some customers to them, they can send some customers to me. We work together and all the boats rise, because there's more than enough people that need coaching. And when you're a solopreneur, you really only have so much capacity. And
Yeah.
that's the third piece, is based off where you want to be. So maybe you want to grow your company and you want to have 5,000 employees in the future. I don't. I've made a decision that I want to keep it very small. I'm the product. I'm the one who does the coaching. So I don't want to train a whole bunch of people to be mini me's. So I look at it from a perspective of, when I get to a certain amount of customers, there's a cutoff. So I'm going to raise my rates. And that way I control the amount of customers that I have. You don't want to get yourself so far out of the market that you're scaring away people. Here's the thing that they don't really realize. Customers that you have today, they respect you, they like you, they see the value in you. So when you raise your prices with them, they're like, okay, makes sense. The
Yeah.
problem is new customers, because they don't know you. They don't know the value that you provide. So you have to get better at marketing where your value is up front, because otherwise you could scare people away, and you tend to get ghosted after the proposal is delivered, because they get sticker shock.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's a great point. I love how you phrase that, where you use your price point to control your customer volume. Like, that is something that I've never ever actually thought about. Maybe it's because I haven't been in a space where that's been truly an issue for me at this point, but it's definitely definitely something to consider, is how you can use price both up and down to
Yep.
fluctuate what volume you get. So
Think about a bank that does mortgages. So how do they control how many how many customers they're going to have? They just do the interest rate.
Mhm.
They raise it up, they lower it down. So they lower it, they're going to get more customers come in. They raise it up, they're going to get less customers. And they can
Yeah.
control that volume that's coming in their organization, which is a way to look at, okay, how can I scale my growth?
Yep.
So I got to control this. If I grow too fast, if suddenly tomorrow you had 3 times the number of customers you have today, what's going to break? That's a question you have to constantly ask yourself. Okay,
Mhm.
now how do I protect myself from that happening? Because it could happen.
Yeah. No, I love that. One of the things, like, I've looked at in my own business is, like, so I know what I can physically handle as a business right now. So that control point for me doesn't necessarily stop with gaining more customers, but it's about setting proper expectations that, hey, we are getting busy, and that as a result, the timeline that it's going to take to get your page, your website done, your SEO done,
Hmm.
whatever that is going to be this long, as a result of that, right? From a messaging perspective, it does give a little bit of that, like, exclusivity piece, right? It's like, hey, these guys are really busy, they know what they're doing, but it also allows me, as you talked about, like, it allows me to control my customer experience. So if I do need to bring in that extra piece, I've already set in motion that, hey, there's going to be an extended timeline on this project, because, well, maybe I'm bringing in the resource I need to scale up to that next piece.
Right. And
So
that's the beauty of this whole thing when we talked about systems of systems. You're thinking, it's like, well, I want to grow the business, but I need to scale it. And oh, by the way, there are probably some things that you do today that are rather clunky.
Oh yeah.
that it's like, boy, if I could just sit down and take a look at my processes that I go through that are repetitive, that I do all the time, and figure out ways to get them faster, add in maybe some, robotics, process automation, or even hire out to a contractor that's going to do some of the low priced repetitive work.
Yeah.
So there's different things that you can do, and that's where you have to look at all the knobs that you're going to turn to make this successful as the business grows, because the concern would be that suddenly your timelines start getting longer. Well, people
Yep.
aren't going to be very happy with that, because then your value is going to drop. So the question is, how do you maintain the timelines that you are so good at and be able to take on more customers? So you have to ask those questions of yourself and think about, like, okay, what can I do?
Yeah.
Where can I add to it? And that's where all three of those elements come into place. So often businesses are just focused on growth, and they get to a point and suddenly they've got all these customer complaints, and there are things happening in their organization, and they're like, I don't understand what's happening. And so I just, well, let's look at some stuff. In scale, I look at first thing I look at is your strategic plan.
Yep.
A lot of businesses don't even have one, or it's in their head, which means that it's constantly changing every time that they think of
Oh yeah.
something. It's like, oh, butterfly, change my strategy.
Yep.
But you have a strategy, you have an operating model, you have an operating system, then you have a strong organizational structure, form each function, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you go into people, process, technology, and information, and what's going on in your organization. Do I need to hire more people? Do I need to upskill? Do I need to create new talent? Do I need new jobs that I don't even have?
Yeah. No, I love that. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll jump headfirst into some more of the scaling stuff. I want to thank my partner and my sponsor, Ventive. Ventive is helping small business owners who can't afford to have gaps in their marketing, sales, and service and operations the opportunity in the system to really move their business forward. They have reimagined what a CRM can be. So you have the seamless customer life cycle and transformation, and it really can impact how you do your work, from the time you bring a customer in to the time you are wrapping up that project with that customer. So they've figured out the formula, and it definitely can help your efficiency and effectiveness. Simplify your customer lifecycle, integrate Ventive into your business systems. We'll make sure there's a link in the comments so you can go jump over to Ventive, get your free 14-day risk-free trial to check it out. I strongly encourage you to do that. They have a really cool interface. So check them out. And now back to the regularly scheduled program. We've talked quite a bit
Hey,
about.
I gotta stop you for a second there, Adam, because
Yeah.
what you just talked about is a scaling methodology right there. CRM. A CRM tool is so powerful to your organization as a whole. And people just don't recognize that until it's too late. So
Yeah.
that's a perfect segue into what we're talking about.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is like, I've set up probably close to 100 CRMs over the last 10 or 15 years here. And like, that is like, if you're as a starting out business, if you haven't put a CRM in place as you're building the rest of your processes, you need to pause and put a CRM in place. Like, like seriously. And Ventive is totally who you should put in place. So,
Well, I mean, you think about the things, what happens when you don't have a CRM?
you're on spreadsheets, man. Like, and
But
that's
sometimes you
dangerous.
don't even know. Like, how do you so this is the thing that I'll ask people. I'll be like, okay, so how many times have you talked to that client? Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna have to look through my emails. Hold on, let me scroll through here and count how many
Oh,
times. And maybe they have the emails filed by customer, A lot of people don't.
No,
They're just oh, it's all my
that's
sent
my
files and I just got to go through it. So their CRM really doesn't even exist. They're just
mhm.
trying to figure it out. But then, like, how do you know about any special events? Do you know how to mail this person if you can't email them anymore? You can
Yeah.
send them any kind of a snail mail. What is something about your customer that's special that you can talk to them about and build that rapport with and deepen the relationship? The conversations that you've had in the past, what have you talked about?
Mhm.
Those are the things that a CRM does for you. And if you think about your entire company, so if you're the CEO and you have a sales team and they're the only ones that are working with a CRM, but the CEO wants to pick up the phone and call this customer because they buy a lot of your product, where are they going to get the information about the conversations and what their husband or wife's name is and how many kids they have? This is the kind of stuff that you need to grow your business. That is a scaling function. And yeah, you can start on spreadsheets. That's crawl before you walk, right?
Yeah.
But that helps somebody like you come in and say, okay, we're going to now put this into a real system so that everybody in the organization can use this.
But yeah, what I think is really cool about CRMs now, right, is there's so many CRMs out there that are so full featured. Like it's no longer just like a sales tool. It's no longer just a project management software. Like so many of these CRMs like actually combine all of that stuff together. So it's like really seamless to move a client from a lead to a sale to here's the project and the scope and all the documents and everything about that project. Now the operations team has it and they can project manage it and plan it all out, and then they literally can send it all over to the finance team, and the finance team can easily just port it over and send the bills and do all of what they need to do with it.
Right.
And so like it even systematizes how your customers can move through your business as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's one of the other areas where when you talk about technology, that you get hurt by silos because finance creates its own technology to be able to manage its finances, and operations has its own tools which are specially designed for whatever operations they have. Marketing's got their tools, sales has their tools, HR's got their tools. And suddenly these tools don't talk to each other anymore, and you've gotten so big that just passing information back and forth in like batch files doesn't work.
yeah,
And you have to
no.
start to think about, how do we integrate all of these technology systems to be able to work together so that we do less manual work trying to bring them all together.
Yeah, no, and that I think that jumps us into really kind of the next part of the conversation, which is the improve, right? So this is going from, we've talked a bit about growth and in some of the systems and the core things that you need to put in place to grow. We've talked a little bit about scale and and how you can approach using systems and tools to help those systems as you scale and bring in new team members and things like that. But at a certain point, you also have to like look back at like all the stuff that you've done and go, wow, that process is really, really clunky. And so, you have to make improvements along the way. So what are some of your strategies for looking at those processes that just, maybe aren't quite working right or just colossally inefficient? How do you find those and start, diving into the fix process of that?
Well, one of the things about improve, everybody thinks it's about process improvement. And while process improvement is one of the areas to focus on, it's not all of it, because you might have capital improvements, like I need a new building, or I
Hmm.
need a building. I might need a van, or like one of my clients, they have a unique petting zoo business. Okay, it's very educational, and they're a traveling zoo basically. Well, they are operating out of their house, and They need an actual facility to be able to grow. So that's a capital improvement. They're going
Yeah.
to purchase a property and build a building, and then they need a van, or they're going to need probably two to be able to expand their operations. So this is because they're using their car.
Yep.
And they're hauling everything around in their car. So this is the kind of stuff that you have to improve your operation. When you're looking at processes, what I like to do, especially from, when you're starting to deal with silos, is start with what's called a SIPOC. I don't know if you've heard this term.
I have
but
not. I'm going to take notes on the replay.
Take some notes. So it's time to pull out the pens. So a SIPOC is, it stands for suppliers, inputs, process, outputs, customers. The way I learned it actually was the reverse. We called it COPUS. So it started with customers and worked to suppliers. But either way, it works perfectly well. What it does is it gives you this high level picture. So the way you build this thing really quick is you do a high level process map, 3 to 5 steps. This is what major happens in my process. And then what I have people do is they do a drop down and they put in, like, what are the major activities that are happening in each one of those steps, just in bullets. That's it.
Okay.
Real quick. That's one page. Then you take those steps and you put them in the process piece. One step, just line them out. Over here, you have inputs that go into your process. These are the things that feed it. It might be something that comes from, let's say it's operations, and there is a new customer that's coming in. So we have a new customer account, sold business.
Yep.
And it's coming in. There might be some kind of financial record that comes with that. This is how much money they spent. There might be some material that's going to be ordered for that job. So that would be an input into the process. All of those go into the input column. Everything that's going to drive that process. Where do they come from is your supplier. So the suppliers are the people that actually are providing the inputs. Then you look at your process, say, out of my process, what are the outputs of it? What comes out of it? Specifically, the things that go to the customers, but sometimes things go to other places in your business. They might be reports that go to the government. It just depends, but there are going to be some outputs. And then there are going to be customers of those outputs. They're the ones who actually receive it. When you this is put on one sheet of paper. So you have that high level process map, maybe on the front, you flip it over and you have your SIPOC on the back. And you have a very good understanding of what's going on in your realm. You know all the people that are feeding it, and you know who you're delivering it to. And when you can go in an organization and you can put on the wall all of the major processes and SIPOC them out, you have a complete understanding of everything that's happening in your organization. You don't have to go to these in-depth process mapping exercises to get there. And it starts to show things that you have problems. Then you ask, well, where do we have data? What kind of data do we have on any of these things? And the things that you can measure are your inputs, your processes themselves, and the outputs. And you're like, where am I having, from the data's perspective, problems in my organization? Using the data and an understanding of how your machine works, you can then start to target into, I think we have a problem here. And it's a whole lot better to do it that way than to just have some manager go, yeah, I think you need to work on this. Like, really? How do you know? And how do you know it's more important than anything else in your organization?
I love the gut check manager.
Yep.
I lived in that shoe long ago before I knew better. I find often my gut is not necessarily wrong, but I've become smarter in understanding that I need to show why it's not wrong and then understand where the priority is. Is that actually a priority, or is that just, a shiny thing off to my left that, is grabbing my attention?
And sometimes that stuff happens in silos. When those silos exist, then, each leader in their own organization thinks whatever they're doing is most important for the organization because they don't really understand everything else that's going on. And that what I just talked about in, brief overview of SIPOCs, that is a way to break through those silos and really get people to understand, oh, I didn't really know that you were getting this from me and that you needed it in a certain way and it was never right and you always had to fix it. Like, I'm sorry. Let me see if we can fix that. And a lot of times it's just communication that's not happening.
Yeah. No, that is so important. And you hit on, the people side of it too, right? Communication, right? A lot of problems stem from communication not happening. And effective communication in an organization is critical from team to team to team. Regardless of how large or small your organization is. So,
yep. Well, that's another thing to improve. So, we talk about process improvement, we talked about capital improvement, but there's organizational improvement, your employee engagement, your culture. These are things that, what, you can't make them happen. You can create an environment that helps them come about, but you can't force an employee to be engaged.
Nope.
You have to create the environment that allows for the employee to feel engaged and to react to that. Cultures, all of these things, they build themselves. And if you choose to do nothing, then they will build themselves on their own. But communication is a key aspect of your values in your organization, which lead to your culture. So if nobody talks to each other, I worked with a company that you would send an email to somebody and they wouldn't respond. It's because they were so used to the leaders coming up with something new every day. They had them, whatever new idea, and they would start implementing it, and then the leader would come up with a new idea. So I just wasted all this effort. So what happened is they stopped responding to emails. They figured if it's important enough, they'll get back to me 2 or 3 times more. and then I might respond to it. But they were so used to jumping at things to get them done. And then, a week later, it's like, oh, we're not working on that thing anymore. So, and that's lack of communication came about as a result of the culture of constantly starting something new and never stopping, never ending something. But, and when you talk about engagement, one of the key things that engages employees is open, honest, and transparent communication up and down the chain and across laterally in the organization. If I can't communicate with the teams around me that I do and that I don't work with, if I feel like we're shut in the bubble, then, and the managers never come down, the leaders, I never see them. I mean, how many organizations where the leader does not go out and see the frontline employees on a regular basis? The
it happens every
CEO,
day.
the COO. Yeah, that's just sad. I go in a lot of times as a fractional COO, and the first thing that I say is I want to go to where the work is done. In process improvement, we call that going to Gemba. Gemba is where the work is done.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to go and I want to see and hear from the people, and I want to go there regularly. And I remember starting with a company, and I said in the meeting as they introduced me, said one of the first things I want to do is I want to go out on the road and I want to see the work that's being done. And right after the meeting, one of the field superintendents walked up to me and he said, I want you to go with me first. Like, okay, this should be interesting. But the thing is that the previous VPs of operations that they had hired never went to the field.
Yeah.
I went down in the valley in Texas, down to Brownsville and, down right at the border to see some of the people that were working down there. And they hadn't seen people in like 2-3 years. The only
That's
person
crazy.
they'd see was a salesperson who would come in who wanted to be introduced to people. And I'm like, what's wrong with that?
Yeah.
That's
No,
not engaging.
no, it's not engaging at all. No, one of the things I used to do as a leader is I literally, and obviously it depends on the size of your team, what you can capably do in a day, right? But I had a team of 22, and I would take, and I scheduled an hour on my calendar every day to go out to the floor and just have a quick, good morning, good afternoon, how's your day going? Anything I can help you with? Like, just that, like, over the course of probably 3 weeks of doing that, like, we went from employees that were afraid to, give out ideas, to employees that all of a sudden had the latest and greatest, productivity ideas that helped lead us to being a really, honestly, overperforming based on our client expectations, which is sometimes just as bad as underperforming.
We had, I mean, there's so many different ways to really open up the communication channels. One of the things that you see it in every organization is they have the staff meetings, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the leaders, they trudge into the conference room, sometimes daily and some normally weekly, and they sit in there for an hour or more and they have a conversation. And then they come out and they have all these things that they're telling people to do. What we did is we started inviting from different offices the employees. And we're going to bring them in and we're going to show them the conversations that actually occur in here. Now, if they were people related discussions, so
Yeah.
sensitive topic, yeah, that's okay. We're going to close the meeting now. You have to leave. We're going to talk about some employees and we don't want you here hearing it. But otherwise, they'd sit in there, and we were doing this with this one client. We're doing it for probably about 3-4 months. So every week they would have the staff meeting. And this lady was her second trip in to see the staff meeting. And she said at the end of the meeting, she said, we all sit there and we see you guys go in and come out of this meeting, and then you come out with all these things, and we have no idea the discussions that were going on that drove those those tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And now we get it. We see what you have to deal with. And
Yeah.
I mean, talk about transparency. It
Yeah.
just totally opens everything up.
No, I definitely agree with that. It's a fantastic, fantastic strategy. So we are getting towards the end of time. I always like to wrap up the show with final thoughts. So I leave the floor to you, John. Tell us your final thoughts, something that people can take away from this episode and implement tomorrow.
Well, the biggest thing that I tell people is that you have to have a strategy. It has to be written, and it has to be something that you're actually implementing and following. It's not something that you stuff into a computer file and then pull it out maybe every 3 or 4 years and go, oh, well, we should have probably looked at that. That's one of the biggest challenges I see, especially with small business, is their strategies up here in their head. They don't really know how they're going to get it done or where they're headed. So the most important thing that you can do is have a strategic plan for your business and going forward.
I love it. I'm a believer in that strategic plan. It works. I have mine written out. I have it printed out, and I have it magneted up to my whiteboard that I look at like 12,000 times a day. So
mine sits right here on the table, and it's written. So it's handwritten. Every week I write down what I'm going to do for the week. And I have things that are aligned to my goals. So I know that I'm kicking the doors down towards my strategy. And I have stuff that I must do. I have stuff that I'd like to maybe do. And then I have fun to do stuff. And I always tell people to make time for fun. Plan it out. Because otherwise everything else is going to override that. And then you won't have, and you'll be like, boy, I really wish that we had gone on that vacation.
Yeah, fun usually doesn't have dollar signs attached to it. Except
Yeah,
for
they
the
do.
ones
It's
you spend.
usually cost.
So it's easier to a lot of times overlook that, because you're like, well, I could go spend $40 today, or I could go make $40 today.
Yep. But that's the
So,
reason why we make the money, right?
Yep.
That's why we do it. People become entrepreneurs because they want the freedom. But if you do that and then you can't use your freedom to do things that are fun, spend time with your family, go to church, take vacations, whatever it might be, then you're not living.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that people, when they become an entrepreneur, they move away from the employee and they become the employer. And they don't realize that they have to take on all of the responsibilities of running that business. When they were an employee, it was just like, I just had one responsibility. I had a job. But because of that, you get the freedom to make decisions on what you are or you're not going to focus on, when you're going to take a vacation and when you're not.
Yep. Exactly. No, I love it. This has been a absolutely phenomenal conversation. You have brought so many nuggets. I am going to be watching this on the replay to catch up on my notes so that I can apply some of this stuff to my own business. Where can people find you if they want to find out more or learn some more of these strategies?
Well, you can find my website is www.crosscutter.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn because I'm very active out there. We both are. I will say, Adam, kudos to you. I love when a podcast is discussion. You didn't send me any questions ahead of time. You just said, here's the topic, we'll talk. And I love that because then it's real and we get to really talk about problems and how to overcome them.
I appreciate that. I really do. And I appreciate your time today too, as well. Definitely go out, follow John on LinkedIn, and, go check out what he's doing over at Crosscutter. Amazing stuff. And if you're in the Texas area and you got a horse, go check out his horse farm as well. I hear it's phenomenal. So
that's what the horses say.
Fantastic. Well, as always, we appreciate everybody that jumped on the live stream. If you're catching this on the replay, we appreciate you as well. Don't forget to stop by your favorite podcast hosting site and drop us a review. You can also find us on YouTube as well. And don't forget to find us on all the socials at The Winning Tactics or thewinningtactics.com. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you all next week.
Well, that wraps up yet another episode of the Winning Tactics Podcast. You can find Adam on both the LinkedIn and Facebook platforms. And to support the show and ensure the success of the podcast, would you kindly consider visiting Patreon.com/Adam Sinkus? We greatly appreciate it. And until next time, from the Winning Tactics Podcast, remember, culture is how your team behaves when no one is looking. Take good care, and thanks for listening.